We're turning around, heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground.
Yo peeps, Mischief here. Welcome to part 2 of Rendlesham Forest. Right, cue the title sequence. Yeah. There we go. Okay, the Superman onesie's back on. It's a bit chilly in the old conspiracy cupboard tonight, as you can hear. Bit of rain as well. So if you want to fall asleep to this video, just listen to the sound of the rain and my voice as we slowly fall asleep, learning about Rendlesham Forest. So in this part 2 then of Rendlesham Forest, I'm going to be looking into the other airman, John Burroughs, and telling you about Larry Warren as well, which you'll be going into the last part of the third part of this, because I decided it needs to be a three-parter, because it's yeah, there's loads more little bits to get into, and obviously I want to cover what people said it possibly could have been, you know, and the skeptical side of it, to show all sides, because this is a huge case, really, and there's loads of random bits of information and people that came forward. And so we looked into Colonel Holt and his Commander Holt, and basically his account of being in the woods on the second night and seeing this red light basically flying about, and he's got his tape recorder, and we heard the tape from that, which I took from the basement office, which was New York Post. So thank you again for those clips, because it's awesome, and the interview with him was great. So go and check that out. The full interview and everything is on there. And obviously clips from Jim Penniston as well. And obviously his account there. So his account, right, obviously I got all excited to build it up, okay? Because it's crazy, isn't it? That is a crazy account. Just wait until you hear what Larry Warren has to say, okay? That's even crazier. But like I say, I'm just putting it out there. It's up for you guys to decide. You know, what he said and what's happened. So I've got some clips from Larry Warren taken on his account of the third night, basically on the 28th then. So there was stuff seen on the 26th, which is when John Burroughs and Jim Penniston allegedly first saw the craft. Then it was like a day later that they went out and investigated something on either the 27th, and they saw lights in the sky on the evening, or the 28th, sorry, when they saw the lights in the sky on the evening, which was technically the third day of this event. Okay, and on that day is when Larry Warren also claims of another event happening. Okay,
were there at the time, were responsible for this, that he physically saw aliens. I'm not sure that any of the other witnesses to these events even talk about aliens. But to be fair to Larry, he said on many occasions that if you take Larry Warren out of the whole Rendlesham story, there is still a story there. And he's absolutely 100% correct.
but I'm going to cover John Burroughs, because he was there with Jim Penniston. Okay, so I didn't cover him last time, because I did Commander Holt, showed you him, showed you Jim Penniston, right, and obviously John Burroughs. Now, the interesting thing with John Burroughs is he's actually won a medical case against the US Air Force for the events of that night and his exposure to possible radiation. Now, what I didn't tell you in the last episode is that apparently during this event where they saw this craft land on the first evening, John and Jim lost about 45 minutes of time compared to everybody else who was actually searching for them. And there was reports of a search party looking for the two guys, and then they found them about 45 minutes later. They thought they'd be gone for like 5-10 minutes, right, with this thing going down, and they're walking up to it, and then it taking back off again and shooting off into the sky. But apparently 45 minutes of time had been lost. So US Airman John Burroughs secured the settlement after years of trying to prove his ill health was caused by the encounter in Rendlesham Forest. A former Ministry of Defence MOD officer said payout confirms what he saw was real and had cause for him to have physical harm. That's an MOD official saying this. So like I said before, there's events. If you haven't seen the episode, go and watch the Welsh Roswell case, okay, at Pentrith. It's I'm going to do another episode on it because I need to try and interview Kaz, because I want to talk about, I want to go there and just see where this thing came through, because that's how Ministry of Defence looking for something, circling and searching for something that they knew was there. Now, at the end of part 3, which I'm going to be covering, I'll be going into nuclear bases and UFO sighting there, because this was reportedly a nuclear storage base where these lights were seen beaming down, and obviously the lights in the forest and this thing landing. Okay, so like I said, John, he won this case basically to to prove that his illnesses came from this event. So it happened, but then, you know, they're saying, like it said here, that he was there, something's happened, something's landed, or was he exposed to radiation from the base? Okay, that could be a possibility if they had nuclear storage, weapons and stuff there. And as you'll hear, possible coercion techniques and things going on. So anyway, Mr. Burrows put forward the declassified report as evidence that he had been injured during the event on Boxing Day in 1980. He said disability coverage from the US Veterans Association offered some closure, but that he now wanted unrestricted access to his full medical records, which are still being held back for some reason. So every step along the way, people have said that this is not true. Some people will always say that. I don't know if I have the full answer, but no one thought I'd get this far, said the ex-serviceman. Along with Jim Penniston, he was the first to investigate mysterious lights near the East Gate at RAF Woodbridge. So, like I said before, it has been put down to possibly the Orphan's Lighthouse, which I'll get into in a little bit later. But the fact that John Burroughs does say that he saw a landed UFO along with Jim, and obviously they get close to it, and that he had some kind of effect from it. And you know, where do we go from there then? Because that's two people, and Jim's report, I will just say, it's mad, all right. And the binary code, I will admit, it's got a couple more different interpretations as well. Okay, so it could mean anything. It could mean nonsense. And the reported locations of the pyramids and everything else in the encoded message, unfortunately, it's not there. Okay, so sorry to burst your bubble. I had to get you all excited about something. But yeah, so is he making that bit up? Did they see the craft? Is this exposure to radiation part of working at the bases of RAF Woodbridge? Who knows? I mean, they're saying possibly that they had nuclear weapons stored there. And if that is a fact that they did, then this is possibly why these craft were there, looking and searching for nuclear material or seeing what was going on and what was being stored on the base. So I will just say that Project Conding, which I've spoke about before, said that Conding explained that there is a phenomenon that governments of this world are aware of. The question is where it comes from. Now I'm going to get into the Five Eyes on another episode, which is coming after these. Obviously talking about the 5 governments that work together, Australia, UK, America, Canada, and another one. And basically that they're all working together, and they've got this sort of cover-up going of not only UAPs, but other things like COVID and things and stuff. So other major, like, you know, events and things that would benefit them to keep everyone suppressed and down. But that's going off on another topic. So going back then to Rendlesham Forest, there were other witnesses to this event that were not just servicemen, okay? So one of them I'm going to talk about is Vince Furkettle. He was out chopping wood one morning in Rendlesham Forest in the late December 1980 when a car drew up. Out stepped 2 men aged about 30 dressed in suits. Men in black, possibly? I mean, it doesn't say what colour suits they were, so men in pink. You know, I'm not going to rule anything out. Could be anything. You know, maybe they had some fashionable kind of attire. You know, I don't know. Don't just want to plane everyone down to just wearing black, you know. Maybe it was men in onesies. I don't know. Good morning. Do you mind if we ask you some questions? Asked one in a well-spoken English accent. Earlier on the 26th and 28th, the United States Air Force security personnel stationed at near RAF Woodbridge had reported seeing strange lights in the surrounding forest. Forest worker Mr. Furkettle's unannounced and unidentified visitors asked if he had seen anything on the previous night. I said no, he recalls. They said, did you leave the house at all? Did you see anything? I said, what? They said, oh, there's a report of some red lights in the forest. We're just checking. And two of them, very politely but firmly, asked me about 20 questions. I thought they were journalists. They suddenly said, oh well, fair enough, there's probably nothing in it, and left. So I bought the papers every day for the next few days to find out what was going on, and of course, there was nothing. 3 years later, however, the sighting made news of the world front page in a story that proclaimed that UFO lands in Suffolk, and that's official. Obviously, I covered that on the last episode. So, obviously, the story is based on, as you know, everything that's gone off in the Rendlesham forest. But isn't it weird that people were approaching just random people out there asking if they'd seen anything? So Mr. Furkettle says that UK authorities have said that they have learned nothing about the incident until Holt's memo. But the memo was not written until 2 weeks after he received his visit, he says. So someone must have told them before. So it seems that the base obviously must have informed somebody, because there are reports that there was radar hits on something coming into the forest and coming near the base. And this is where we get to the third night. And the sort of bit that unhinges this a bit more in some ways. So I'm just going to finish off his sort of report then, Mr. Furkettle. So it was nothing. It was absolutely normal glade in the forest with 3 rabbit scrapes, and they're all carefully marked. That happened to be roughly a triangle, he says. I mean, there was a ring of sticks around it, marking it, and I think fair dues to the Americans. If I'd been out that night and saw a light and came back in the daytime looking for something, I could totally understand why they said this must be it. So, as a countryman born and bred, however, he saw nothing unusual. And it was a completely natural glade, and there's nothing, lots of things around that look like this. So, he saw the burnt trees, and he said obviously the trees was heat radiating from the spacecraft and burnt the trees, but it wasn't. It was one of the rangers, Bill Briggs, using an axe to mark these trees. So, we've got accounts then from people there that say they didn't see anything. Okay, could understand obviously that there's young airmen there. We've got the Orphaners Lighthouse out to the west, and people obviously perceived that to be the out to the east. Yes, east of there, and obviously might have perceived this to be something coming down, and obviously finding these marks and stuff. And it's been said that these marks were done with an axe actually, and it was marked by the forestry, obviously there, of what they were going to cut down. And these marks in the ground just happened to be roughly the same distance apart, apparently, and marked this area. And the high radiation wasn't as high as they said it possibly could have been. It was maybe just a little bit higher than background radiation. But obviously we do still have the testimony from John Burroughs and Jim Pennison. Now, John Burroughs also drew a picture of what he claimed to see in the woods, which is up here for you as well. And, it's just strange, innit, that I would have thought that they would have known what the lighthouse possibly looked like, or flares, And as you'll see in a little bit, there could be possible ties to the SAS. Okay. So just to finish off the bit about John Burroughs, then, he's obviously wrote a book as well, Weaponizing of an Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, which he outlines research that he says shows the incident was caused by experiments in harnessing energy field in the forest. So obviously he's changed his mind on the alien aspect or something like that, and he claims that the lighthouse was emitting EM, electromagnetic frequencies, towards Rendlesham Forest. He stresses, I never went on the record to say it was a spaceship because I didn't know what it was. What he saw was some sort of energy or plasma, which could be a form of intelligence, he says. Now, that sort of goes back to what Kaz Clark says she might have seen, which was these barrel-shaped plasma-like energy objects. So possibly it could have been that, or as some people have theorised, some kind of plasma weapon technology, which is an episode I'm going to cover at some point, which has actually been mentioned by the MOD and been studied by America, UK military, and it was a possible outcome of the phenomenon of the Conding report that they believed that this was a plasma phenomenon. Basically, all this UAP stuff was a plasma phenomenon. So, if you want to learn more about John Burroughs, please go and check out, obviously, his accounts. You've got many other witnesses in it as well, so feel free to go and look at them. But I have to cover this guy next, okay? So, we've got Larry Warren, okay? Now, he's a strange character in all of this, because he claims he was there on the third night, apparently, when a second craft or something landed out in a field, and he was basically sent out to look for it. So, Lawrence P. Warren, or Lawrence Patrick Warren, also used the pseudonym of Art Wallace, was a member of the US Air Force Security Police stationed at the American base on British soil, as we know was RAF Woodbridge. He is most famously known for his involvement in the Rendlesham Forest incident and published a book on this event, also co-authored by Peter Robbins. So he basically claims then that he was taken from his guard post to investigate strange lights in the forest clearing near the base. He said he and other officers established an enlisted men with some officers basically confronted an alien craft on the ground. In addition, the base deputy commander has come forward to verify some of the details in this case, which has led to it being called the British Roswell, obviously. So he's not only claiming that there was a craft, but he's claiming that there was beings. And in December 2005, the updated expanded version of Left at East Gate was released and published by Cosmo On Demand. So you can go and look at his book as well. So now Nick Pope was involved in this case as well, which I've not really mentioned too much. He was at the MOD, and he was one of the guys that investigated and looked into Rendlesham Forest. So I'm going to do him in part 3. But Larry Warren, that's basically what he came forward and claimed then.
How do I know the truth on these events? I know from firsthand experience, and 23 years later, I'm looking for answers still. I was 19 years old when it happened. I'm in my 40s now, and I'm still looking. And I think everyone else that went through them in their own ways are doing the same thing.
So there are people that claim that Larry wasn't actually there, okay, that he's making this whole thing up. But in Larry's defense, he talks about the harassment and the interference that he has received as being the first eyewitness, basically, to come forward. Now, he was the first person to come forward with this after Holt's report and some other events that went off. He was basically the first whistleblower, as he likes to claim, in the UFO field.
I don't know what the great truth of who they were that was there. I know the object I saw was not built in Detroit, and I know the pilots weren't lighthouse keepers. It's to be funny about it, but the explanations, the counter-explanations, are more ridiculous than the fact that there was a non-human presence in that forest on the night I was involved, and that was the third night that involved the most participants. I've named them for years, long before this was any part of pop culture at all. And the bottom line is, I wrote a book about this just to set the record straight on what happened to me. And 5 years later, I have never been sued for what I said or naming the people and placing them in the roles they were in at all.
As a service airman on that side of the Whistleblower Act, which obviously wasn't a thing back then at all. So it was Harry's information which led to the release of the so-called Holt Memorandum. Larry describes the events on the third night at Rendlesham Forest that led to the encounter between Wing Commander Gordon Williams and 3 non-human life forms at Chapel Green. Now, I've got a video to play of him and him speaking about it, so here's a couple of clips for you now.
Outside watching this also.
We do have evidence that the first incident took place because we've got the photograph of the landing site. Also, a patrol went out following this and took radiation readings.
Sitting here below with a red flash. We just crossed the creek. And,
On the 29th of December, 2 days after the original sighting, the soldiers took radiation readings and mounted cameras in the area to see if they could make some sort of sense of the situation.
To my right, there was a motion picture camera on a tripod, and someone else had, at that time, a video camera filming everything I'm about to describe.
That night, Larry Warren claims he witnessed alien life forms.
The place of the explosion of light was this triangular structured object that had like a rainbow effect on it. It had boxes and pipes or things on its surface. It looked very heavy. It looked very old. I had this feeling it was this old thing. I don't know why. Time seemed to be at half speed. I wasn't looking at this as a rational, normal person. I don't know how it affected others. There was no heat. There was no sound that I can recall. In fact, everything was almost like in a vacuum. Some people ran off, had retreated quite quick. The cameras were filming this the whole while. Some people just stayed in place. We were probably shocked, you know.
The man in charge of the patrol was Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt. Larry Warren remembers the encounter his team had in the forest, as recorded on the U.S. Air Force tape.
Holt's tape actually describes the beginning of this event, as seen from about 200 yards away through the trees, where the red light comes in and then there's an object or something explodes, and that's what they were seeing in Capel Green through the forest.
okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like a pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. One on the right heading away too. Yeah, we're both heading north. So here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
This light came around this blind side of the object. Never saw the back of it. It couldn't move from the area it was in. And inside the light were these, the light diminished in brightness. It was a foot off the ground, and there were what you'd only describe as children at that time. I wasn't the only one that did it. Some other people said I thought these were children. And they had 4.5 feet tall, above the ground, very bright, translucent at points. You couldn't see the lower extremities, but you could clearly see the face, and it wasn't human. But it seemed like it was either a projection, or it was separate from us, or it was protected from us. It was, but it was alive. There was no doubt in my mind the way these things moved, the upper extremities. There was a noise behind us at one point, and the arms on one of these 3 beings raised, almost like this, in a defensive posture. It had some kind of equipment around its belt, all 3 of them.
So, as you hear from him then, he says that they were some kind of translucent, kind of maybe energy beings or something. Some guys ran off, some guys didn't know what was going on, and then he got ordered back to the base.
I mean, it sounds like a B science fiction movie. I mean, it just does, but there they were. They weren't from here.
The witnesses were absolutely in a terrible state. I mean, these are military men.
We see strange strobe-like flashes to the rather sporadic, but there's definitely something, some kind of phenomenon. 305.
He approached these things. There's been misstatements over the years that there was communication with sign language and all this, like close in the movies. It wasn't. It was definitely a visual standoff. A very uncomfortable one, so it looked, with this phenomenon.
315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon.
Some of the other people looked totally buried, like everything they knew collapsed, it was done.
Observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground.
We were called off by our shift supervisor back to the staging area, parking area. And it seemed the lower ranking guys were called off first, so I gladly left. I looked over my shoulder, my left shoulder, as I was going over the rise, and this face-off was still going on this field called Capel Green. And I'll never forget it. And there it was. We got back to the vehicles, and
what I don't have for you is the clip of him basically talking about what happened to him after this event where it landed. Now, he said he was sent off and the officers were still there. They apparently talked for at least another hour or so with the beings, or what he could perceive maybe to be that time, and then they left. I don't know what to make of his account. He's quite serious about it, and as you'll see in this little clip, one of the consequences was basically having his passport taken off him. So here's this little clip for you.
Larry has had some difficulties, however. The US government temporarily suspended his passport, restricting his freedom to travel.
I can look at myself and say that I'm the first person ever to be an alleged whistleblower, and I am a government whistleblower, to have his United States passport suspended officially, which does not happen. Our passports are given to us, and it's a matter of constitutional right, unless you're a convicted felon. I'm not. I had mine suspended for a year, and with the simple reason that I spoke about sensitive defense issues on public soil, and it took a former United States Attorney General under two presidents, Ramsey Clark, to get it back. Now, I can't think of any witness over the last 55 years in this subject that has had repercussions like that.
So you got to admit that's strange, isn't it? Him having his passport taken and other things, being treated like a criminal basically for coming forward and basically being a whistleblower to the Rendlesham Forest case. So what I would like you to do in this episode then, before I get onto the final pieces of this Rendlesham Forest case in the part 3, and just sort of boil it all down and go over everything and tell you the other parts to what it could possibly have been as well, then please let me know in the comments what you think. What do you think of Larry Warren? Go and look into him. If you've never heard of him, go and look into him. Obviously there's some clips from here. This is from a documentary on history, I believe.
First thing I saw was a probably 50 foot across diameter, yellowish green translucent object on the ground. It was probably a foot in height. It was attached to the ground. It wasn't hovering above it, but had shape and definition. You could see through it at times periodically, and the lights went from green to yellow mist, is all I can describe it as. It was like a platform, but fluid. Beyond all this was a farmer's house, and there was a light on the second floor. There was a car in the driveway, and there were people probably outside watching this also.
We do have evidence that the first incident took place because we've got the photograph of the landing site. Also, a patrol went out following this and took radiation readings.
So you can go and check that out. Looking into it, of course it's on history. Every mad thing's on history. Ancient Aliens is on friggin' history, for God's sake. And Ancient Aliens, by the way, if you're looking for another UFO expert, a British one, maybe that could possibly wear a tweed jacket and talk about ancient antiquity and the possible links to UFOs and the pyramids and how the Great Giza Plateau was formed, so that ginormous pyramid-shaped structures could land on top of the pyramids. And please, I'd love to join your little group, or maybe Gaia.com. Oh, they're funny. Anyway, yeah, so please let me know in the comments, what do you think about Larry Warren? What do you think about John Burroughs? His, injuries that he's claiming for. I'm not sure exactly what they were, but, he's been written off by the MOD as like, here you go, have some money. You got injured by a UFO. Okay? And does that then back up things that David Grush, I hate to say his name now, I don't know why, is bringing out, and now he's not allowed to say people like John Burroughs and these people that have been injured, possibly. Like he mentioned, by UFOs, etc. So let me know, what do you think of this part of it? Okay, the third night stuff, Okay, the first two I could possibly get my head around, okay? The third one is a bit more out there, and I am an out there guy, as you know. But even this is kind of like, okay. But then when you look at things that happened to him with his passport, what was going on there? This is because apparently he was leaking secret information or something. And obviously with the Holt memorandum that came out and everything. So, yeah, go check that out. Go check out those other pieces and look forward to my final thoughts on this in part 3 and the other bases that have been sort of looked into by UFOs that might contain nuclear storage. Okay, and please go and watch the Wells Roswell episode. I think you'll find it fascinating. Cass Clark's encounter of what happened there, and the fact that our military, the UK military, knows what these things are and knows what they're doing here. It's pretty obvious by their actions on that day. Okay, so anyway, look forward. I'll see you in part 3. See you later, peeps.
1981, just weeks after these events. As important as it is, on official Air Force letterhead authored by a deputy base commander of a very important NATO air base, describing phenomena that reads like science fiction, all that is good and fine, but the bottom line is, I witnessed it, and it's the biggest story ever told, really, when it gets down to it. If this case was brought into a court of law, the testimony from the witnesses and the evidence that could be brought forward would bring this house of cards down in a matter of hours, and that I stand by.